A man's fist cracked against a woman's face in the middle of a crowded grocery store parking lot. Grace Miller hit the pavement. Blood dripped from her split lip. 3 men towered over her while shoppers froze, too terrified to move. Then a 6-year-old girl stepped between her mother and the men who had just struck her down. "Don't touch my mom!" Sophie planted her tiny feet. Her whole body shook. But she did not run. The lead thug laughed and reached for her. That's when 95 pounds of military-trained fury exploded from the shadows. And the stranger with dead eyes finally spoke 4 words that changed everything. "You shouldn't have done that." Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe and stay with us until the very end. The parking lot of Henderson's grocery went dead silent. Sophie Miller planted her feet on the cracked asphalt and stared up at 3 men who could have crushed her with one hand. Her tiny fists were clenched. Her chin was trembling. But she did not move. "I said don't touch my mom." The man called Razor laughed. It was an ugly sound, like gravel scraping glass. He still had his thick fingers wrapped around Grace Miller's forearm, squeezing hard enough to leave marks. "Look at this," Razor said to his 2 companions. "Little Mouse thinks she's a lion." Grace tried to pull free. "Let go of me. Please, my daughter is watching." "That's the point, sweetheart." Razor leaned closer, his breath hot against her face. "Mr. Harlan wants you to understand something. When he makes an offer, smart people accept. You've been stupid for 6 months now. Time to get smart." Sophie grabbed Razor's jacket and pulled with all her 38 pounds. "Leave her alone. Leave her alone." One of Razor's men, a thick-necked brute named Colt, reached down and shoved Sophie backward. She stumbled, hit the ground hard, and cried out. Something in Grace Miller snapped. She twisted in Razor's grip and slammed her palm against his face. The crack echoed across the parking lot. Razor's head jerked sideways. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Razor smiled. "Now that," he said slowly, "was a mistake." He raised his hand. Grace closed her eyes and pulled Sophie against her chest, shielding her daughter with her own body. The blow never came. Instead, there was a sound, a low rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. And then a voice, quiet and calm, but carrying a weight that stopped Razor's arm in midair. "I wouldn't do that." Razor turned. The man standing 10 feet away was tall, broad-shouldered, and utterly still. He wore a faded flannel shirt and jeans that had seen better days. His face was weathered, his jaw covered in 3 days of stubble. But it was his eyes that made Razor's blood run cold. They were empty. Not angry. Not threatening. Just empty. Like windows into a room where all the furniture had been removed. Beside him stood a dog. Not a pet. A weapon. 95 pounds of Belgian Malinois muscles coiled beneath a tan and black coat. Amber eyes locked onto Razor with laser focus. The dog wasn't barking. It wasn't lunging. It was waiting. And somehow, that was worse. "Mind your business, stranger." Razor tried to sound confident. He failed. "This is a private conversation." The man didn't move. "Looked more like assault to me." "You don't know what you're looking at." "I know exactly what I'm looking at." The man's voice stayed level, almost bored. 3 grown men terrorizing a woman and her child in broad daylight. I've seen it before. In places where there's no law. Places where men like you think they can do whatever they want. He took 1 step forward. "This isn't one of those places." Razor's hand moved toward his belt. The growl from the dog intensified, and for the first time Razor noticed that the animal's hackles were fully raised. Your dog attacks me, I'll put it down. You're welcome to try. The stranger's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but something close. His name is Shadow. He's done 3 combat tours, taken down men twice your size, men who were actually dangerous. He tilted his head slightly. You're not dangerous. You're a bully, and bullies only understand one thing. Colt stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. There's 3 of us, pal. 1 of you. I've faced worse odds. Yeah, when? The stranger's empty eyes seemed to darken. Kandahar, Fallujah, Mosul, pick one. The words hung in the air like smoke. Colt stopped moving. Even Razor seemed to shrink slightly. Sophie, still clutching her mother's leg, stared at the stranger with wide eyes. She wasn't scared of him. She didn't know why, but she wasn't scared at all. The dog Shadow turned his massive head toward her for just a moment. His tail gave a single gentle wag. Then his attention snapped back to Razor. We're leaving. Razor released Grace's arm and stepped back. But this ain't over, Mrs. Miller. Mr. Harlan's patience is running out. You got 1 week to reconsider his offer. After that, he glanced at Sophie. Things get complicated. If I see you near them again, the stranger said, things will get complicated for you. Right now. Right here. And I promise you won't enjoy the experience. Razor held the stranger's gaze for 3 long seconds. Then he turned and walked toward a black pickup truck, his men following like shadows. The engine roared to life, and the truck peeled out of the parking lot, leaving tire marks on the pavement. Silence returned. Grace was shaking. She pressed her hand against her arm where Razor had grabbed her, already feeling the bruise forming beneath her skin. She looked at the stranger, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. Don't thank me yet. The stranger's voice was still flat, emotionless. Men like that don't quit. They come back, usually worse. Grace swallowed hard. I know. Sophie tugged at her mother's hand. Mommy, can I pet the dog? Grace blinked. Honey, I don't think. But Sophie had already let go. She walked toward Shadow with the fearless confidence that only 6-year-olds possess. The massive dog watched her approach his body tense, his training keeping him in place. Sophie, wait. The stranger held up a hand. It's okay. He won't hurt her. Sophie stopped 2 feet from Shadow and looked up at the stranger. Is he your friend? Something flickered in those empty eyes. Something almost human. He's my partner. What's his name again? Shadow. Sophie nodded seriously, then looked at the dog. Hi, Shadow. I'm Sophie. Thank you for helping my mommy. Shadow's ears swiveled forward. His tail wagged once, twice. Then slowly, deliberately, he lowered his head and pressed his nose against Sophie's palm. Grace gasped. The stranger stared. Sophie giggled, the first genuine laugh Grace had heard from her daughter in months, and wrapped her small arms around Shadow's thick neck. The dog, this creature trained for war, this weapon of muscle and teeth, stood perfectly still and let her hug him. He likes me, Sophie whispered. The stranger crouched down, bringing himself to Sophie's eye level. Up close, Grace could see the scars, a thin white line across his jaw, another disappearing into his hairline. She could see the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. This was a man who had seen too much and slept too little. He doesn't like anyone, the stranger said quietly. Not since we came back. You're the first person he's let touch him in 8 months. Sophie smiled. Maybe he was just waiting for me. For a long moment, the stranger said nothing. Then slowly something changed in his face. The emptiness didn't disappear, but it softened. Just slightly. Maybe he was. Grace stepped forward, her hand extended. "I'm Grace Miller. This is my daughter Sophie. I run the medical clinic on the edge of town." The stranger stood and took her hand. His grip was firm but careful, like he was conscious of his own strength. "Marcus Cole." "You're not from around here?" "No, just passing through." "How long are you staying?" Marcus looked at Sophie, who was now whispering secrets into Shadow's ear, while the dog listened with what appeared to be genuine interest. "I rented a cabin up in the hills, month to month. Needed some quiet." "You picked the wrong town for quiet, Mr. Cole." "So I'm learning." Grace hesitated. The smart thing would be to thank him again and walk away. To go home, lock the doors, and pray that Razor's threats were empty. But something made her speak. "Those men, they work for a developer named Victor Harlan. He wants my land. My late husband built that clinic with his own hands. It's all I have left of him. All Sophie has left of her father." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "They killed him." Grace's eyes widened. "What? No. It was a car accident. 18 months ago. The road was icy, and..." She stopped. Marcus was watching her with those empty eyes, and suddenly Grace felt something cold crawl down her spine. A question she had never allowed herself to ask was forming in her mind. "It was an accident," she repeated, but her voice wavered. "Was it? The police said... What do you say?" Grace opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "David was careful," she whispered. "He drove that road every day for 15 years. He knew every curve, every danger spot, and the night he died, he was coming home early. He called me, said he'd found something important, something he needed to show me. He sounded scared." "Did he tell you what it was?" "No. He said not over the phone. And then..." Grace's voice cracked. "And then he never came home." Sophie looked up from Shadow, her small face suddenly serious. "Daddy's in heaven now. He watches over us." Marcus held the child's gaze. "I'm sure he does." "Are you a soldier?" "I was. My daddy helped people. He was a doctor. He said helping people was the most important thing in the world." He was right. Sophie nodded firmly. "You helped us today. That means you're a good person. Shadow knows. That's why he likes me. He can tell." Marcus said nothing, but Grace saw something shift in his expression, a crack in the armor quickly covered, but definitely there. "We should let you go," Grace said. "You came into town for groceries, not for... this. Groceries can wait. Mr. Cole, Marcus." "Marcus." Grace took a breath. "I appreciate what you did. More than I can say, but I don't want to drag you into my problems. These men, Harlan, they're dangerous. They've been harassing me for months, threatening me. If you get involved..." "I'm already involved. You don't have to be." Marcus looked at Shadow, who was now sitting protectively at Sophie's side, his massive head level with her shoulder. The dog met his eyes, and something passed between them, a communication that went beyond words. "My partner seems to disagree." Sophie grabbed her mother's hand. "Mommy, can Shadow come to our house? Please, he's my friend now." Grace started to object, but Sophie's eyes, David's eyes, the same warm brown, stopped her. Those eyes had been dull for 18 months. Sad, scared, and now for the first time since the funeral, they were bright again. "That's up to Mr. Marcus, honey." "Marcus," Sophie corrected. "He said just Marcus, right?" Marcus almost smiled. "Right. So can Shadow come visit, please?" Marcus looked at Grace, and for a moment neither of them spoke. There was a conversation happening in that silence, a negotiation, an understanding being reached without words. "I should check on you," Marcus said finally. "Make sure those men don't come back, just for today." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." Grace studied his face. The scars, the exhaustion, the emptiness that wasn't quite as empty as it had been 5 minutes ago. "Okay, just for today." Sophie clapped her hands and threw her arms around Shadow again. "You hear that, Shadow? We're going to my house. I'll show you my room and my toys and my drawings and—" Grace put her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Sophie, Shadow is a working dog. He's not a pet. You need to be gentle and respectful." "I know, Mommy. I'll be so careful. I promise." Marcus nodded once, a short, sharp gesture. "She'll be fine. Shadow knows the difference between work and this." "What is this?" Marcus watched Sophie leading Shadow toward Grace's car, the massive dog walking slowly to match her short stride, his tail wagging gently. "I don't know," he admitted. "But it's the first time in 8 months I've seen him happy." He paused. "It's the first time in 8 months I've felt anything at all." Grace didn't know how to respond to that, so she just nodded and followed her daughter to the car, leaving Marcus Cole standing in the parking lot of Henderson's grocery, watching them go. He should walk away. Every instinct, every piece of training, every survival mechanism screamed at him to get in his truck, drive back to the cabin, and forget this ever happened. But Shadow was already halfway to Grace's car, looking back at him with an expression that clearly said, "Are you coming or not?" Marcus sighed. "Yeah," he muttered to himself. "I'm coming." The clinic sat at the edge of town, a modest building with a faded sign that read Miller Family Medical Center, in letters that had once been blue, but had faded to gray. Marcus pulled his truck into the small parking lot and cut the engine. Grace's car was already there. Through the window, he could see Sophie dragging Shadow toward the front door, while Grace fumbled with her keys. The dog moved with patient tolerance, his massive body accommodating the child's enthusiasm. Marcus didn't get out immediately. Instead, he sat in the silence of his truck and studied the building, the property, the surrounding terrain. The clinic was isolated a quarter-mile from the nearest neighbor, backed up against wooded hills that rose toward the mountains. Good for privacy, bad for security. Only one access road, which meant only one escape route. The building itself was old, solid construction, but the windows were large and ground level. Easy to breach. No fence, no cameras, no alarm system that he could see. If he were planning an assault on this location, it would take him approximately 3 minutes to secure both exits, neutralize any defenders, and extract any targets. Victor Harlan's men could do it in 5. Marcus got out of the truck. Inside the clinic was warmer than he expected. Not just the temperature, the feeling. Photos lined the walls, a smiling man with dark hair and kind eyes holding a newborn baby. The same man shaking hands with elderly patients. A wedding photo, Grace in white, her face radiant, her husband looking at her like she was the only person in the world. David Miller, the man who built this place, the man who died on an icy road, the man who might have been murdered. Sophie's voice echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. "This is the waiting room, Shadow. This is where people sit when they're sick. And over here is where Mommy gives shots. I don't like shots. Do you like shots?" Shadow's response was a gentle woof. Grace appeared from a side room, her face still pale, but her composure returning. She had changed out of the clothes Razor had grabbed. Marcus noticed. Good. Don't keep reminders around. Can I get you some coffee water? I'm fine. Please, it's the least I can do. Marcus nodded. Coffee. Black. Grace disappeared into what he assumed was a small kitchen. Marcus used the opportunity to walk the perimeter of the main room, cataloging entry points, sight lines, defensive positions. The habits of war died hard. You're checking for threats. He turned. Grace stood in the doorway holding 2 cups. Her voice wasn't accusing, just observant. Yes. Find any? Several. Your locks are basic. Your windows are vulnerable. You have no security system, no early warning, and only one exit route. If someone wanted to get to you, they could do it easily. Grace handed him a cup. That's not very comforting. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be true. She sat down on one of the waiting room chairs, cradling her coffee, like it was the only warm thing in a cold world. I know this place isn't secure. I know I'm vulnerable. I've known it for months. But what am I supposed to do? I can't afford a security system. I can't move. This clinic is all I have. The people who come here, they depend on me. Half of them can't afford to see a doctor anywhere else. Marcus sat across from her. The chair creaked under his weight. Tell me about Victor Harlan. Grace's hands tightened around her cup. He arrived about 2 years ago. Big plans, big promises. Said he was going to build a luxury resort, Mountain Vista, he called it. Said it would bring jobs, tourists, money to Pinewood Ridge. People believed him. God, I believed him. But he needs land, lots of it. And the land he wants most is this land, where the clinic sits. Why? I don't know. He says it's the view, the location. But there are plenty of properties with better views that aren't occupied. He's fixated on this one. Marcus filed that information away. Has he made offers? Dozens. Started low, kept going higher. Last month he offered me 3 times what this place is worth. I still said no. Because of your husband. Because of my husband. Because of my patience. Because this is my home and I will not be bullied out of it by some rich developer with a God complex. Her voice had risen. She caught herself, took a breath, lowered it again. Sorry. I don't usually. I try to stay calm. For Sophie. Anger's not weakness. It's fuel. Grace looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time since the parking lot. What happened to you, Marcus? In those places you mentioned. Kandahar, Fallujah. War happened. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Silence stretched between them. From somewhere in the back, they could hear Sophie's voice still chattering away at Shadow. My husband was a good man, Grace said softly. The best man I've ever known. He came here 20 years ago because he wanted to help people who couldn't help themselves. Miners, loggers, families who had nothing. He built this clinic with his own savings, worked 18-hour days, never turned anyone away. And when he died, her voice broke. When he died, I promised myself I would keep his dream alive, no matter what, no matter who tried to stop me. Marcus set down his coffee cup. The night he died, you said he found something important. Yes. Did you ever find out what it was? No. The police searched his car, his office. Nothing. Did they search thoroughly? Grace frowned. What do you mean? I mean, did your husband have anywhere private? Somewhere he might hide something he didn't want found. The question hung in the air. Grace's frown deepened, and Marcus could see her mind working, turning over memories she had buried. There's a storage room, she said slowly. In the basement. David used to go down there sometimes. He said it was just old files, nothing important. She stopped. I never thought to look. Marcus stood. Show me. The basement was dark, dusty, and filled with the accumulated debris of 2 decades. Old medical equipment, boxes of files, broken furniture waiting for repair that would never come. Grace led the way to a corner where a metal filing cabinet sat against the wall. She pulled open the drawers one after another. Files. Just files. I don't understand. David spent hours down here. What was he doing? Marcus moved past her and examined the cabinet. It was old, heavy industrial, the kind of thing that didn't move easily, but the dust on the floor told a different story. This cabinet has been shifted, he said. Recently. Look at the marks. Grace looked. 4 distinct lines in the dust, showing where the cabinet's feet had scraped across the concrete. Help me move it. Together they pulled the cabinet away from the wall. Behind it, previously hidden, was a small safe embedded in the concrete. The kind you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. David never told me about this. Can you open it? I don't know the combination. I didn't even know it existed. Marcus studied the safe. It was old, but well-maintained. A 4-digit combination lock. He thought about David Miller, the man in the photos, the kind-eyed doctor who helped everyone. Try his birthday, Marcus said. That's too obvious. Sometimes obvious works. Grace knelt down and entered 4 numbers. The safe didn't open. Try your daughter's birthday. She tried. Nothing. Your anniversary. A click. The door swung open. Inside was a leather journal, a USB drive, and a single photograph. Grace reached in with trembling hands and pulled out the journal. She opened it to the first page. Her face went white. What is it? Marcus asked. Grace didn't answer. She was staring at the page, her eyes moving back and forth, reading words her dead husband had written. Then she looked up at Marcus, and the fear in her eyes was unlike anything he had seen that day, deeper, colder, more absolute. David didn't die in an accident, she whispered. He was murdered, and I know why. She held up the journal, her hands shaking. Victor Harlan isn't building a resort. He's building a tunnel, an underground passage to the Canadian border, for smuggling, human trafficking, and my husband found proof. She clutched the journal to her chest. That's why they killed him. That's why they want this land. And if they find out I have this... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Grace couldn't stop shaking. She sat at the kitchen table. David's journal open in front of her, page after page of her husband's handwriting, revealing horrors she had never imagined. Marcus stood by the window, watching the road. Shadow lay at Sophie's feet in the next room, the child blissfully unaware of the bomb that had just detonated in her mother's world. He knew for 3 months, Grace whispered. 3 months. He was investigating alone. He didn't tell me because he wanted to protect us. Marcus turned. What exactly did he find? Grace's finger traced the words on the page. The abandoned mining tunnels. They run for miles under these mountains. David discovered that Harlan's construction crews weren't building foundations for a resort. They were excavating, connecting the old tunnels, creating a passage that runs all the way to the Canadian border. For what? Everything. Grace's voice cracked. Drugs, weapons, and people. Marcus, human beings. David intercepted communications. Harlan is connected to something called the Consortium. They've been using small towns along the border as transit points for years. Pinewood Ridge was supposed to be their crown jewel, a permanent, invisible pipeline. Marcus's jaw tightened. And your clinic sits directly above the main access point. Yes, the tunnels run right under this building. That's why Harlan needs this land. Not for the view, for the entrance. Did David go to the police? Grace laughed bitterly. He tried. Look at this entry. She turned the journal toward him. Marcus read David's cramped handwriting met with Sheriff Patterson today. Showed him the evidence. He listened, nodded, said he'd look into it. But I saw something in his eyes. Fear. Or worse, recognition. I don't think the sheriff is clean. I don't know who I can trust anymore. Patterson retired 6 months after David died, Grace said. Moved to Florida. Lives in a house worth twice what a small-town sheriff could afford. Bought and paid for. Everyone's bought and paid for. That's what David realized. The city council, the building inspectors, even the... A sound from outside made them both freeze. Car engine. Getting closer. Marcus moved instantly, positioning himself beside the window with a clear sight line to the driveway. His hand went to the weapon at his hip, a habit Grace hadn't even noticed until now. A sedan pulled up. Dark blue, clean, official looking. A woman stepped out mid-40s, sharp features, dark hair pulled back tight. She wore a deputy's uniform. You know her? Marcus asked. Deputy Laura Vance. She's been with the department for about a year. Is she clean? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. The deputy walked toward the front door. Her hand rested on her holster, but her body language was cautious, not aggressive. She knocked 3 times. Waited. Grace looked at Marcus. Answer it, he said. I'll be listening. Grace walked to the door and opened it. Deputy Vance? Mrs. Miller. The deputy's eyes swept past Grace, scanning the interior. I heard about what happened at Henderson's this morning. Razor Rains and his crew. You okay? I'm fine. A stranger intervened. The man with the dog, I know. Vance's voice dropped. Can I come in? We need to talk, privately. Grace hesitated. Marcus appeared in the hallway, his presence impossible to ignore. Vance's hand tightened on her holster. Who are you? A friend. I didn't ask what. I asked who. Marcus Cole. Something flickered in Vance's eyes. The Navy SEAL. You're the one who took down Razor's crew. I encouraged them to leave. 3 of Harlan's best enforcers, and you encouraged them to leave. Just like that. They weren't his best. His best would have been smarter. Vance studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she removed her hand from her holster. I'm not here on official business, Mrs. Miller. I'm here because I need your help, and I think you need mine. Grace glanced at Marcus. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. Come in. They sat in the living room, Sophie still playing with Shadow in the next room. Vance kept her voice low. I've been investigating Victor Harlan for 8 months. Off the books. My brother died 2 years ago. Overdose. The drugs that killed him came through a pipeline that traces back to the same network Harlan serves. The consortium, Grace said. Vance's head snapped toward her. How do you know that name? My husband knew, before he died. He left evidence. Vance went pale. David Miller was investigating them. That's why he was murdered. Yes. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Vance pressed her palm against her forehead. I suspected, but I couldn't prove it. The accident report was clean, too clean. No witnesses, no cameras, just a dead doctor on an icy road. It wasn't an accident, Marcus said. It was an execution. And now they want Grace out of the way, Vance continued. They've tried buying her. They've tried scaring her. This morning was an escalation. What comes next? Grace asked. Vance looked at her with something like pity. Next, they stopped being nice. The first attack came 2 days later. Grace was woken at 3 in the morning by Shadow's barking deep, urgent, explosive. She ran to Sophie's room and found her daughter sitting up in bed, eyes wide with terror. Mommy, there's someone outside. Marcus was already there. He had been sleeping in the clinic's back office, refusing to leave them unprotected. He held a finger to his lips and moved to the window. "Stay down. Both of you." Shadow stood at the front door, his entire body rigid, his growl a continuous rumble of warning. Through the glass, Marcus could see shapes moving in the darkness. 3. No, 4. They weren't approaching the house. They were circling it. "What do they want?" Grace whispered. "They're testing. Seeing how we respond. How fast, how prepared." A light flared outside. Orange. Flickering. Fire. "They're burning the shed," Marcus said. He was moving before the words finished leaving his mouth. "Marcus, wait!" But he was already gone. Shadow racing beside him. Grace grabbed Sophie and pulled her toward the bathroom, the most interior room, no windows, thick walls. "Stay here, baby. Don't move. Don't make a sound." "Mommy, I'm scared." "I know. I'm scared too. But Marcus will protect us. Shadow will protect us. Okay." Sophie nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Grace kissed her forehead and ran. Outside, Marcus moved through the darkness like he was born from it. The shed was fully engulfed now, flames licking toward the sky, but he ignored it. The fire was a distraction, a diversion. The real threat was elsewhere. He heard them before he saw them. 2 men near the back of the clinic prying at a basement window. Shadow hit the first one like a freight train, jaws clamping down on the man's forearm. The scream that followed was inhuman. The second man spun, reaching for something in his jacket. Marcus closed the distance in 3 steps. A palm strike to the throat, an elbow to the temple. The man dropped. Footsteps behind him. 2 more coming around the corner. Marcus pivoted, grabbed the first by his collar, and used his momentum to throw him into the second. They went down in a tangle of limbs. One of them pulled a knife. Marcus didn't hesitate. He caught the wrist twisted, heard the snap of bone. The knife clattered to the ground. "Who sent you?" The man was crying, clutching his broken wrist. "Please, please don't." Marcus's grip tightened. "Who sent you?" "Harlan." "Harlan sent us. It was just supposed to be a warning." "Warning about what?" "The deadline. She's got 3 days to sign. If she doesn't what?" The man's eyes went wild with fear. "They'll take the kid. They'll make it look legal. CPS is coming tomorrow." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. He released the man, who scrambled backward, sobbing. Shadow returned to his side, blood on his muzzle, his eyes still locked on the fallen intruders. "Get out," Marcus said. "All of you. Tell Harlan that if anyone comes near this family again, I won't be this gentle." They ran. Marcus stood in the darkness, the burning shed casting flickering shadows across his face. Behind him, sirens began to wail in the distance. Someone had called the fire department. But the real fire, the one that would destroy Grace and Sophie, was coming at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning in the form of a government agent with a clipboard and the power to tear a family apart. He had to move fast. The call went out at 0500. Marcus stood on the clinic's back porch satellite phone pressed to his ear, watching the sun begin to paint the mountains gold. "Torres, I need you." The voice that answered was thick with sleep. "Marcus, what the hell, man? It's 5 in the morning." "I know what time it is." Something in Marcus's tone cut through the fog. Torres' tech to the team was suddenly alert. "What's wrong?" "I'm in Montana, small town called Pinewood Ridge. There's a woman and her kid in trouble. Deep trouble. Organized crime, corrupt officials, the whole package. They're going to try to take her daughter today, using CPS as cover." "What do you need?" "Everything. Your full kit. Surveillance, communications, and your brain. I need to find evidence fast, and I need to protect this family while I'm doing it." There was a pause. Then, "How soon?" "Yesterday." "I'm on my way. 8 hours." "Make it 6. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone and looked toward the house where Grace was holding Sophie in her arms, both of them still shaking from the night's attack. 6 hours. The CPS worker arrived at 9 sharp. Her name was Ms. Albright, mid-40s, professional smile, cold eyes. She carried a leather briefcase and moved with the confidence of someone who had destroyed families before and would do it again. Grace met her at the door with Sophie hiding behind her legs. "Mrs. Miller, thank you for seeing me. May I come in? Do I have a choice?" "There's always a choice, Mrs. Miller. But refusing cooperation tends to complicate things." Grace stepped aside. Ms. Albright entered, her eyes scanning the interior like a predator assessing territory. "I understand there was an incident last night. A fire. Arson. Someone tried to break into our home." "How frightening." Albright's voice held no sympathy. "And this has happened before I understand. 3 days ago at Henderson's grocery. Violence. Right in front of your daughter. I was defending myself." "I'm sure you were." Albright opened her briefcase and withdrew a clipboard. "The thing is, Mrs. Miller, when a child is repeatedly exposed to dangerous situations, we have an obligation to intervene. It's not about blame, it's about safety." Grace's hands balled into fists. "The only danger to my daughter comes from the men Victor Harlan keeps sending to terrorize us." "Mr. Harlan," Albright raised an eyebrow. "The developer, I wasn't aware he was involved in any of this." "He's behind all of it. The threats, the arson, the men who attacked us." "Do you have proof?" Grace opened her mouth, closed it. The journal was hidden. The evidence was hidden. She couldn't reveal it not to someone who might be working for Harlan. Albright smiled. "That's what I thought." She turned her attention to Sophie, crouching down to the child's level. "Hello, sweetheart. My name is Ms. Albright. I'm here to make sure you're okay. Can I ask you some questions?" Sophie pressed closer to her mother. "I don't want to talk to you." "Sophie," Grace said gently. "It's okay. You can answer her questions." "No." Sophie's voice was small but firm. "She's not nice, I can tell." Albright's smile tightened. "Children are perceptive, aren't they? Perhaps too perceptive." She stood up, making notes on her clipboard. "I'll need to conduct a home inspection, review Sophie's living conditions, her bedroom, her play areas, and I'll need to schedule a follow-up interview. Alone." "No." Grace's voice was steel. "You're not taking my daughter anywhere." "Mrs. Miller, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm not here to take anyone. I'm here to assess. If everything is satisfactory, we'll close the file and move on. And if it isn't satisfactory..." Albright met her eyes. "Then we'll have to consider what's best for Sophie's welfare, even if that means temporary placement while we investigate further." The words hit Grace like a physical blow. Temporary placement. Foster care. Her daughter ripped from her arms, placed with strangers traumatized beyond repair. "You can't do this." "I can. And I will if necessary." Albright checked her watch. "I'll begin the inspection now. Please don't interfere." She moved deeper into the house. Grace stood frozen, tears burning in her eyes, her entire body shaking with rage and helplessness. Sophie tugged at her hand. "Mommy, don't let her take me. Please don't let her take me." Grace knelt down and pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace. "I won't, baby. I promise. No one is taking you from me. No one." But even as she said the words, she didn't know if she could keep that promise. Marcus was waiting outside when Albright finished her inspection. She walked to her car without acknowledging him, but he stepped into her path. Long visit, he said. Albright looked up at him. Do I know you? No. But I know you. I know what you're doing, and I know who's paying you to do it. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear recognition. Both. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Victor Harlan, the consortium. You're part of the machine, Ms. Albright. A small part, but a part nonetheless. Albright's composure cracked. I'm a government employee. I'm doing my job. Your job is to protect children, not to help criminals steal them from their mothers. You can't prove anything. Not yet. Marcus leaned closer. But I will. And when I do, everyone involved in this conspiracy is going to face consequences. Everyone. Including you. Albright's face went pale. She pushed past him, climbed into her car, and drove away faster than the speed limit allowed. Marcus watched her go. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed. Torres, how far out are you? 2 hours. Make it 1. Things are moving faster than I thought. Torres arrived in a rental car packed with equipment cases that looked like they belonged on a military base, not in rural Montana. He was leaner than Marcus, with quick eyes that never stopped moving and fingers that danced across keyboards like they were extensions of his brain. Within an hour, he had transformed the clinic's back office into a command center. Okay, Torres said, pulling up screens filled with data. Victor Harlan, Apex Holdings. Let's see what you're hiding. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Windows opened. Closed. Data streamed. Shell companies. Lots of them. Money flowing through the Caymans, Switzerland, Cyprus. Classic laundering structure. He paused, squinting at something. Wait, that's interesting. What? Harlan's been skimming. Look at this unauthorized transfers to a private account. He's stealing from his own organization. How much? 2, maybe 3 million over the past year. Small amounts hard to trace, but consistent. Torres grinned. His bosses don't know. If they did, he'd already be dead. Marcus filed that information away. Leverage. If Harlan's masters found out he was stealing from them, his protection would evaporate. What about the tunnels? Can you confirm them? Working on it. More typing. Geological surveys, construction permits, equipment manifests. Yeah, here we go. They've been excavating for 18 months. The permits say foundation work, but the equipment they're using, that's tunnel boring machinery. Industrial grade. Can you trace the supply chain? Find out where they're bringing in materials. Already on it. And, whoa. What? Torres turned his screen toward Marcus. They're not just building tunnels. They're building infrastructure. Climate control, ventilation, reinforced walls. This isn't a smuggling route. It's a facility, a holding facility. Marcus felt his stomach turn. For what? Torres's face had gone pale. For people. They're building a processing center, a place to hold human cargo before moving them across the border. The weight of it settled on both men like a physical thing. This wasn't just crime. This was evil. Industrial-scale human trafficking happening right beneath their feet. We need to shut this down, Marcus said. We need help. This is bigger than us. FBI, Homeland Security, someone. Can we trust anyone? I don't know. But we can't do this alone. A knock at the door made them both reach for weapons. Grace's voice came through. Marcus, there's someone here, a woman. She says she knows you. Marcus exchanged a look with Torres. Then he walked to the door and opened it. Deputy Laura Vance stood on the porch. But she wasn't alone. Behind her was a man. Tall, gray suit, forgettable face. Eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Cole, Vance said. Her voice was strained. This is Mr. Cross. He says he's here to help. Mr. Cross smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Gentlemen, he said, We need to talk about Victor Harlan, and about the very dangerous game you've decided to play." Mr. Cross stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. His movements were fluid, economical, the kind that came from years of training most people never received. Marcus recognized it immediately. This man was dangerous. More dangerous than Razor, more dangerous than anyone Harlan had sent so far. "You're not FBI," Marcus said. "No." Cross removed his jacket and folded it carefully over his arm. "I'm something else entirely." Torres had moved to block the hallway leading to Sophie's room. His hand rested near his concealed weapon. "What kind of something else?" Cross smiled. It was the smile of a man who had long ago stopped pretending to feel things he didn't feel. "The kind that doesn't officially exist. The kind that handles problems governments can't acknowledge." Deputy Vance stepped between them, her face tight with tension. "He approached me this morning, said he has information about Harlan, about the consortium. I didn't know what else to do." "You brought a ghost to a safe house," Marcus said. "That's what you did. A necessary risk." Cross walked to the window and glanced outside, scanning the tree line with practiced precision. "I've been tracking the consortium for 3 years. Victor Harlan is a middle manager, ambitious, greedy, and increasingly unstable. He's made mistakes, expensive mistakes. My employers are concerned." "Your employers?" Torres asked. "The people who sign my checks prefer to remain anonymous. What matters is that our interests are aligned. The consortium's operation here needs to be shut down. Harlan needs to be neutralized. And your little family needs to survive long enough for that to happen." Grace emerged from the hallway, her face pale but determined. "Why should we trust you?" Cross turned to face her. For a moment, something almost human flickered in his eyes. "You shouldn't. Trust is a luxury in my profession. But consider this: if I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. All of you. I'm very good at my job, Mrs. Miller." "That's not comforting." "It's not meant to be. It's meant to be true." Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself between Cross and Grace. "What do you know about the tunnels?" "Everything. The excavation, the holding facility, the scheduled shipments." Cross paused. "I also know that the consortium has lost patience with Harlan. His failures have drawn too much attention. They're sending a cleanup team, 6 operators military trained, arriving within 48 hours. Torres swore under his breath. "A cleanup team, for what? For everyone. Harlan, his men, Mrs. Miller and her daughter, you." Cross's gaze settled on Marcus. "They're not coming to intimidate. They're coming to erase. Once they're finished, Pinewood Ridge will have a tragic story about a fire or an accident or a murder-suicide. Something neat. Something that closes questions instead of opening them." Sophie's voice came from the hallway. "Mommy." Everyone turned. The little girl stood in the doorway. Shadow pressed against her side, his amber eyes locked onto Cross with unwavering intensity. The dog's hackles were raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Cross studied the animal with professional interest. "Belgian Malinois, military trained. 3 tours if I had to guess. He doesn't like me." "He's a good judge of character," Marcus said. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he recognizes what he sees." Cross crouched down slowly, keeping his hands visible. "I'm not your enemy, boy. Not today." Shadow's growl intensified. Sophie wrapped her arms around the dog's neck. "Shadow says you're not telling the truth. Not all of it." Cross raised an eyebrow. "Smart child." "What aren't you telling us?" Grace demanded. Cross stood. The mask of professional detachment slipped just for a moment. "The cleanup team isn't just coming for Harlan's mess. They're coming for me too." Silence. "You're compromised," Marcus said. "Worse, I'm terminated. My organization received intel that I've been freelancing, gathering evidence against the consortium for my own purposes, selling information to competitors. Cross's jaw tightened. The intel is false. Planted. But it doesn't matter. In my world, suspicion is guilt. I'm a dead man walking. So you came here looking for allies, Torres said. People who have as much to lose as you do. I came here because survival requires strange bedfellows. You need information and tactical support. I need people who can help me take down the consortium before they take me down. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Grace stepped forward, her voice cold. My husband died because of these people. My daughter's life is in danger because of these people. And you want me to trust a man who admits he's worked for organizations just like them? Cross met her eyes. I've done terrible things, Mrs. Miller. Things that would keep you awake at night. Things I'll answer for eventually in one way or another. But I didn't kill your husband. I wasn't even in this country when he died. And whatever else I am, I'm not in the business of hurting children. Everyone has lines, Sophie said quietly. She was still holding Shadow, her small face serious beyond her years. Daddy said that. He said even bad people have lines they won't cross. Cross looked at her for a long moment. Your father was a wise man. He was the best man in the world. I believe you. Marcus made his decision. 48 hours. You said the cleanup team arrives in 48 hours. Give or take. Then we have 48 hours to build a case and get it to someone who can act on it. FBI, Homeland Security. Someone outside the consortium's reach. That's the problem, Cross said. The consortium has people everywhere, every federal agency, every local department. I've spent 3 years gathering evidence, and every time I got close to exposing them, the investigation was shut down. Witnesses disappeared. Files vanished. They're not just criminals. They're a shadow government. Torres pulled up his laptop. What if we don't go through official channels? What if we go public media, social media? Make it impossible to bury. They'll discredit you, call you conspiracy theorists. Bury the story under noise and distraction. Not if we have undeniable proof, Grace said. She walked to the safe room and returned with David's journal. My husband documented everything. Names, dates, transactions. He was building a case for 3 months before they killed him. Cross took the journal and flipped through it. His expression changed surprise, then respect. This is remarkable. Dr. Miller was thorough. He was a doctor. Details saved lives. These details could save thousands of lives, if we can get them to the right people. Who are the right people? Cross closed the journal. I have a contact, a journalist. She's been investigating the consortium for years. Good instincts, better courage, and she's clean. I've verified it myself. Where is she? Seattle, 4 hours away. But she won't come here. Too dangerous. We'd have to go to her. Marcus shook his head. We can't leave Grace and Sophie unprotected. Then we split up. You take the evidence to Seattle. I stay here and keep the family safe until you return. Absolutely not. Grace's voice was sharp. I'm not staying here with a stranger who admits he's a professional killer. Mrs. Miller, no. If anyone's taking that journal to Seattle, it's me. David gathered that evidence. David died for it. I'm not handing it off to someone else. Marcus started to object, but Sophie spoke first. I want to stay with Shadow. Everyone looked at her. Shadow will protect me, he promised. She hugged the dog tighter. You and Mommy go. Do what you have to do. Shadow and I will be okay. Grace knelt in front of her daughter. Honey, I can't leave you. You have to, Mommy. This is how we beat the bad people. Daddy knew that. That's why he wrote everything down, so we could finish what he started. Tears streamed down Grace's face. When did you get so brave? I learned from you. And from Daddy. And from Shadow. Sophie looked at Marcus. "You'll bring my mommy back safe." "Right." Marcus met the child's eyes. In them he saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. Faith. Pure, unconditional faith. "I promise." The decision was made. Torres would stay with Sophie Shadow and Deputy Vance. Marcus, Grace, and Cross would drive to Seattle with the evidence. 4 hours there, however long the meeting took 4 hours back. 12 hours, maybe 16 at most. They left at midnight. Marcus drove. Grace sat in the passenger seat, David's journal clutched to her chest like a lifeline. Cross occupied the back, his eyes constantly scanning the mirrors, the road, the darkness pressing in from all sides. "Tell me about the journalist," Marcus said. "Her name is Elena Vasquez. She works for a non-profit investigative outlet. They've broken stories about human trafficking before. Cartels, international networks. She knows how to verify evidence and protect sources. Can she be trusted? As much as anyone in this business." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have." Grace spoke without looking up. "What happens after? If she publishes the story, if the world finds out about the consortium, what happens to us?" Cross was silent for a moment. "That depends on how thoroughly we destroy them. If the story creates enough pressure forces, enough arrests, seizes enough assets, the consortium will be too busy surviving to pursue revenge. But if we only wound them, then they'll hunt us forever." "Yes." Grace turned to look at him. "Then we don't wound them. We kill them. Every last part of this organization, we burn it to the ground." Cross studied her face. "Dr. Miller was fortunate to have you." "No, I was fortunate to have him, and I will not let his death be meaningless." They drove through the night. And back at the clinic, Torres ran through his security protocols for the 3rd time. Motion sensors, cameras, tripwires. He had transformed the building into a fortress, but he knew it wouldn't stop a professional team. It would only slow them down. Deputy Vance checked her weapon. "How bad is this going to get?" "Bad. Probably worse." "Have you and Marcus done this before? Gone up against people like the consortium?" Torres thought about the question. "We've gone up against terrorists, warlords, arms dealers. People who thought they were untouchable. Some of them were smarter than the consortium. Some were crazier. But the result was always the same." "What result?" "We won. We always win." "How?" Torres looked at her. "Because we have something they don't. We're fighting for something that matters. They're just fighting for money, for power. Those things are fragile. They break when you hit them hard enough." "And what are you fighting for?" Torres nodded toward Sophie's room, where the little girl was sleeping with Shadow curled around her like a furry shield. "Her. And everyone like her. The ones who can't fight for themselves." A soft alarm beeped on his laptop. Torres spun toward the screen, his blood going cold. "What is it?" Vance demanded. "Motion sensor. East perimeter." His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up camera feeds. "There. 2 contacts, no 3. They're early. The cleanup team is early." Vance drew her weapon. "How long do we have?" "Minutes, maybe less." "What do we do?" Torres grabbed his rifle and tossed Vance a spare magazine. "We hold the line. No matter what, that little girl does not fall into their hands." The first explosion shattered the clinic's front windows. Sophie screamed. Shadow was on his feet, instantly positioning himself between the child and the door. Torres grabbed Sophie and pulled her toward the reinforced room he had prepared in the basement. "Stay with her!" he shouted at Vance. "No matter what happens up here, you stay with her." "Where are you going?" "To slow them down." He didn't wait for a response. He was already moving rifle-up training taking over. The world narrowed to targets, angles, cover positions. He had done this 100 times. He could do it again. But as he reached the top of the stairs and saw shadows moving through the smoke, a cold voice in his head whispered, 3 against 6. Not great odds. Not great at all. In Seattle, Elena Vasquez stared at David Miller's journal with trembling hands. This is everything, she breathed. Names, accounts, routes, contacts. This could bring down half the criminal enterprises on the West Coast. Will you publish it? Grace asked. I'll do better than publish it. I have contacts at the Department of Justice. Clean ones. People I've vetted personally. This evidence goes to them at the same time it goes public. They won't be able to bury it. Too many eyes watching. Cross leaned forward. How soon? I can have everything uploaded and distributed within 6 hours. By morning, this will be front-page news on every major outlet. Make it 4 hours, Marcus said. We're running out of time. Elena looked at him. What's happening? The people who want this buried are making their move. Right now. People we care about are in danger. Then you should go. I have everything I need. Go save your people. They were back on the road within minutes. Marcus pushed the vehicle to its limits, eating up the miles between Seattle and Pinewood Ridge. Grace sat beside him, her phone clutched in her hand, trying to reach Torres. No answer. He's not picking up, she said, her voice cracking. The signal might be jammed, Marcus said. It's a common tactic. Or he might be, Don't go there. Torres is one of the best operators I've ever known. He won't let anything happen to Sophie. You don't know that. I know him. That's enough. Cross spoke from the back seat. I'm picking up emergency radio traffic. Multiple units responding to the clinic address. Shots fired. Structure fire. Grace's scream was primal. My daughter! Marcus floored the accelerator. Torres was bleeding. The bullet had caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around, dropping him behind an overturned examination table. The clinic was burning. Smoke filled the air, making it impossible to see more than a few feet in any direction. But he had taken down 3 of them. 3 operators who had thought their training made them invincible. They were wrong. 3 down. 3 to go. Torres, Vance's voice came from the basement stairs. Torres, are you alive? Still breathing? Barely? How's Sophie? Safe. Shadow won't let anyone near her. Good dog. Best dog. A shadow moved through the smoke. Torres fired. Missed. The return shot sent splinters flying past his face. 2 of them circling, he called out. One's trying for the back entrance. I can cover the back. No. Stay with Sophie. She's the priority. Torres, that's an order, deputy. Vance went silent. Torres knew she wanted to argue, but there was no time. The attackers were regrouping, communicating through hand signals, preparing for a final push. Torres checked his magazine. 4 rounds left. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But he didn't need to win. He just needed to hold. Marcus was coming. He had to believe that. He had to trust his brother. Come on, you bastards, he whispered. Let's dance. Marcus arrived to chaos. Fire trucks, police cars, ambulances. The clinic was engulfed in flames, smoke billowing into the night sky. Firefighters battled the blaze while EMTs rushed toward the scene. Grace was out of the vehicle before it stopped moving. Sophie, Sophie! Marcus caught her, held her back. Wait, we don't know what we're walking into. Let me go. My daughter is alive. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. They turned. Deputy Vance emerged from the shadows, her uniform torn and bloodied, Sophie cradled in her arms. Shadow walked beside them, limping slightly, but alert, his eyes scanning for threats. Grace collapsed against Marcus, sobbing with relief. Then she ran to her daughter and pulled her into an embrace so tight, it seemed she would never let go. "Mommy," Sophie whispered. "I knew you'd come back. Shadow said you would. Baby, my baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I left you." Marcus found Torres sitting against a fire truck, an EMT bandaging his shoulder. He was pale, sweating, but alive. "How many?" Marcus asked. "6 total. Got 4. The other 2 rabbited when they heard the sirens." "You held them off. Alone." "Not alone." Torres nodded toward Shadow, who had returned to Sophie's side and was now licking the child's face. "That dog is something else. Took down 2 of them himself. Saved my life." Marcus knelt beside his friend. "I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. That little girl needed protecting. That's what we do." Cross appeared beside them, his face grim. "The 2 that escaped, they'll report back. The consortium will know their operation is blown." "Let them know," Marcus said. "By morning, the whole world will know. Elena Vasquez is publishing everything." "Then it's over." "No, not yet." Marcus looked toward the burning clinic, toward Grace holding her daughter, toward the chaos that Victor Harlan had unleashed on this small town. "Harlan is still out there. And he's going to do something desperate." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen men like him before, cornered animals. When they realize they can't win, they decide that everyone has to lose." Cross nodded slowly. "So what do we do?" Marcus watched Sophie bury her face in Shadow's fur, watched Grace stroke her daughter's hair with trembling hands, watched the flames consume the last remnants of David Miller's dream. "We end this," he said. "Tonight." Victor Harlan knew he was a dead man. He sat in his office, staring at the flames visible through his window, the Miller clinic burning like a beacon of his failure. His phone had been ringing for an hour. Messages from the consortium. Messages he couldn't answer. Messages that probably contained his death sentence. 6 operators sent to clean up his mess. 4 dead. 2 fleeing. The evidence he had spent 18 months trying to suppress was now in the hands of a journalist. By morning, his name would be on every news channel in America. His hand shook as he poured himself another whiskey. 3rd one in the past hour. It didn't help. Nothing helped. "Mr. Harlan." He spun. Councilman Bradley Dunn stood in the doorway, his face pale and sweating. "They know Victor. They know everything. The FBI just raided my office. My office. Do you understand what this means?" "I understand." "No, you don't." Dunn's voice cracked with hysteria. "I'm going to prison. My career is over. My family, my wife doesn't even know." "Shut up. Don't tell me to shut up. This is your fault, all of it. I should never have." Harlan moved faster than a man his age should be able to move. His hand closed around Dunn's throat and slammed him against the wall. "Listen to me very carefully, Bradley. Panicking accomplishes nothing. We still have options." "What options?" "The evidence is out. The consortium has abandoned us. The consortium has abandoned me. You're just collateral damage." Harlan released him. "But there's still one card left to play. One piece of leverage that can still save us both." "What leverage? What could possibly—" "The girl." Dunn's face went white. "Sophie Miller. You can't be serious." "I'm always serious. The journalist has David Miller's evidence. The mother has become a symbol of resistance. But the child—" Harlan smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "The child is innocent, sympathetic, valuable. With her in our hands, we can negotiate. We can make deals. We can survive." "That's kidnapping. That's survival, Bradley. The only question is whether you want to survive with me or hang separately." Dunn stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly the last remnants of his conscience crumbled. "What do you need me to do?" Grace refused to leave Sophie's side. They had taken refuge in the town's small community center, a building that had quickly become a makeshift command post. Deputy Vance had called in every officer she trusted, which turned out to be exactly 3, including herself. Torres lay on a cot, his shoulder bandaged, his laptop still open and tracking news feeds. Marcus stood by the window, watching the chaos outside. Fire trucks still battled the clinic's flames. News vans were arriving. The story was spreading. "Elena just went live," Torres reported. "Major networks are picking it up. The FBI has issued statements. They're calling it one of the largest human trafficking operations ever uncovered on American soil." "Does it name Harlan specifically?" Marcus asked. "Front and center, along with Councilman Dunn, Sheriff Patterson in Florida, and about a dozen other corrupt officials. The consortium is being treated as an organized crime syndicate. RICO charges, asset seizures, the whole 9 yards. It's not enough." Everyone turned to look at Cross. The ghost stood in the corner, his face unreadable. "What do you mean?" Grace demanded. "The consortium is bigger than this. Much bigger. Taking down Harlan and his network hurts them, but it doesn't destroy them. They'll regroup, rebuild, find new routes, new operatives, new middle managers." "So what are you saying, that all of this was pointless?" "No, I'm saying we've won a battle, not the war, and Harlan knows it." Cross moved toward the window. "Men like him don't surrender. They don't accept defeat. When cornered, they lash out. They take hostages. They burn everything down rather than let someone else claim victory." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You think he's coming for Sophie?" "I think he has no other move. His money is frozen. His allies are fleeing. His masters want him dead. The only leverage he has left is emotional, and there's nothing more emotional than a child in danger." Grace pulled Sophie closer. The little girl was sleeping, finally exhausted after the night's terror. Shadow lay at her feet, his eyes open, watching everything. "He won't get near her," Grace said. "I won't let him." "Neither will I," Marcus replied. "Torres, can you track Harlan's location?" "Working on it. His phone is off, but his car has a GPS tracker, standard corporate vehicle. Give me a minute." The minute stretched into 2, 3. Then Torres's face changed. "He's moving, fast, heading toward the old mining facility on the North Ridge." Cross leaned over his shoulder. "The tunnel entrance, the main access point to the underground network." "Why would he go there?" Vance asked. "The FBI will have that locked down within hours." "Because he's not running," Marcus said, understanding dawning. "He's preparing. The tunnels connect to the Canadian border, if he can get across. He needs leverage first," Cross finished. "Something to ensure safe passage, someone the authorities won't risk." Everyone looked at Sophie. "We need to move her," Grace said. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere he can't find her." "There is no somewhere safe," Marcus replied. "Harlan knows this town. He has eyes everywhere. If we run, he'll find us. Our only option is to end this before he has a chance to act." "How? We go to him. Before he comes to us." "That's insane," Torres said. "You're walking into his territory, his ground. He'll have men waiting." "Not many. Most of his people are dead, arrested, or fleeing. He's alone, desperate. That makes him dangerous, but it also makes him vulnerable." Cross nodded slowly. "I know those tunnels. I've studied the schematics. There's a ventilation shaft on the east side, an emergency exit that doesn't appear on any official maps. We could come in behind him." I told you, Mr. Cole. I'm a dead man either way. Might as well die doing something useful." Marcus studied him for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Cross took it. "Vance, you stay here with Torres and guard Grace and Sophie. If anything gets past us, you're the last line." "Understood." Grace grabbed Marcus's arm. Come back. Promise me you'll come back. He looked at Sophie still sleeping in her mother's arms, at Shadow, who met his eyes with an intelligence that transcended species, at Grace, whose strength had carried her through horrors no one should have to endure. I promise. He left before she could see the doubt in his eyes. The mining facility was a graveyard of rusted equipment and collapsed buildings. Victor Harlan waited in the central processing structure, a hulking steel skeleton that had once employed hundreds of men. Now it was empty, silent, haunted by the ghosts of an industry long dead. 2 men flanked him. Not professionals, not trained operatives, just desperate criminals who had stayed loyal because they had nowhere else to go. Razor's remaining crew reduced to these pathetic remnants. He's coming, one of them said. The Navy SEAL. He'll come. Of course he'll come. He's predictable, honorable. All those military types are. They can't resist a final confrontation. Harlan checked his weapon. When he arrives, we kill him. Then we take the girl. Simple. What about the other one, the ghost? Cross is a professional. He'll prioritize self-preservation. Once Carter is dead, Cross will disappear. That's what ghosts do. The sound of footsteps echoed through the structure. Harlan raised his weapon, his heart pounding. This was it, the final move, the last desperate play. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was not Marcus Cole. It was Councilman Bradley Dunn. His hands raised, his face twisted with fear. Victor! Victor! They're coming. The FBI. They've surrounded the building. They're everywhere. Harlan's composure cracked. What? How? I don't know. They must have tracked us. We have to run. We have to... A shot rang out. Dunn staggered, looking down at the red bloom spreading across his chest. His eyes found Harlan's, filled with confusion, betrayal, disbelief. Then he collapsed. Harlan lowered his smoking gun. Loose end. Should have taken care of him years ago. His remaining men stared at the body, their faces pale. Gentlemen, I suggest you focus. We have company. From 3 different directions, shadows began to move. Marcus approached from the west, using the rusted machinery for cover. Cross had gone east, toward the ventilation shaft. They had agreed to hit from multiple angles, keep Harlan off balance, force him to divide his attention. The plan fell apart in the first 30 seconds. The gunfire was deafening. One of Harlan's men had positioned himself on an elevated platform with a clear sight line to Marcus's approach. Bullets sparked off metal, forcing Marcus to retreat. Cross, he shouted into his radio. I'm pinned down. I see him. Give me 30 seconds. I don't have 30 seconds. More gunfire. Marcus felt something hot graze his arm, close, too close. He returned fire, but the angle was wrong. The shooter had every advantage. Then suddenly the shooting stopped. A cry of pain echoed through the structure, followed by the sound of a body hitting the ground. Clear, Cross's voice came through the radio. Moving to secondary position. Marcus pushed forward. The body of Harlan's man lay crumpled near the platform, a neat hole in his forehead. Cross's work. Professional. Clean. Harlan, Marcus called out. It's over. The FBI is closing in surrender now, and you live... Harlan's laugh echoed through the steel skeleton. You think I'm afraid of prison? You think that scares me? The consortium has people in every federal facility in this country. If I'm arrested, I'm dead within a week. Then run, disappear. I don't care what happens to you. Just walk away. Walk away. Harlan's voice was closer now. After everything, after all I've built, no, Mr. Cole. I don't walk away. I was never good at losing. Marcus heard movement to his right. He spun weapon raised and froze. Harlan stood 20 feet away. He was not alone. Grace Miller was with him, Harlan's gun pressed against her temple. "No," Marcus breathed. "Yes." Harlan's smile was manic, triumphant. "Your Deputy Vance is very trusting. When Councilman Dunn arrived at the community center claiming to have information, she let him in. My last 2 men were right behind him. They took the child and her mother while Torres was distracted." Marcus's blood turned to ice. "Where's Sophie?" "Safe, for now. My men are holding her at a secondary location. If I don't check in every 15 minutes, they have orders to kill her." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Harlan pressed the gun harder against Grace's temple. She whimpered, tears streaming down her face. "Do you want to test that theory? Do you want to risk that little girl's life on a bluff?" Marcus's hands shook. His training screamed at him to act, to find an angle to take the shot. But Grace was in the way. And Sophie. Sophie was somewhere else, vulnerable, alone. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Survival. You're going to escort me to my car. You're going to let me drive away. Once I'm across the border, I'll release the girl. And Grace, she comes with me, insurance. Once I'm safe, I'll let her go." "That's not going to happen." "Then the child dies. Make your choice, Mr. Cole. Hero's death or hero's compromise." Cross's voice whispered in Marcus's earpiece. "I have a shot. It's risky. 60% chance of clean hit." 60%. 4 in 10 chance of hitting Grace instead of Harlan. "Hold," Marcus whispered. "I can take it." "I said hold." Harlan was watching him, reading his body language. "Tell your ghost to stand down. If I see any movement, any sign of interference, Mrs. Miller dies instantly." Marcus raised his hand slowly. "Cross. Back off." "Marcus, that's an order." Silence. Harlan nodded, satisfied. "Smart. Now drop your weapon." Marcus bent down and placed his pistol on the ground. "Kick it away." He did. "Now walk, slowly, toward the parking area." Marcus walked. Grace walked beside Harlan, her eyes meeting Marcus's, filled with terror and something else, apology. She blamed herself for this, for trusting Dunn, for being caught. They moved through the structure out into the cold night air. Harlan's car was parked 50 feet away. Salvation. Escape. Victory. They were 10 feet from the vehicle when Shadow attacked. The dog erupted from the darkness like a missile, 95 pounds of trained fury aimed directly at Harlan's gun arm. There was no bark, no warning, just explosive violence. Harlan screamed. His arm jerked. The gun fired the shot going wide. Grace threw herself away, hitting the ground and rolling. Marcus was already moving. He closed the distance in 3 steps, his hand catching Harlan's wrist, twisting, hearing bone snap. The gun clattered to the ground. Shadow released Harlan's arm and backed away, positioning himself protectively in front of Grace. His muzzle was bloody. His eyes never left the writhing man on the ground. Marcus stood over Harlan, breathing hard. Every instinct screamed at him to finish it, to end this monster who had threatened a child, murdered an innocent man, destroyed countless lives. His hands clenched into fists. "Do it!" Harlan gasped, clutching his ruined arm. "You want to. I can see it in your eyes. Do it!" Marcus looked at Grace. She was staring at him, tears streaming down her face, shaking her head. He looked at Shadow. The dog sat perfectly still, waiting for a command. He thought about Sophie, about what she would think if she knew he had killed a man in cold blood, about what he would become if he crossed that line. "No," Marcus stepped back. You don't deserve a quick death. You deserve to spend the rest of your life in a cage knowing that everything you built is gone, that your name will be synonymous with evil, that children will learn about you in history classes as an example of humanity at its worst. He pulled zip ties from his pocket and secured Harlan's hands behind his back. Where's Sophie? Harlan laughed, blood dripping from his mouth. You think this is over? The consortium never forgets, never forgives. That girl will spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. Marcus's fist connected with Harlan's jaw. The man slumped, unconscious. That's enough of that. Cross emerged from the shadows, his weapon still drawn. Torres just radioed in. FBI tactical team found Sophie. She's safe. 2 of Harlan's men were guarding her. They surrendered without a fight. Grace sobbed with relief. Marcus helped her to her feet, and she collapsed against him, her whole body shaking. It's over, he said. It's finally over. Sophie, she's safe. She's okay. Grace pulled back and looked at him. You saved us. You saved all of us. Marcus shook his head. No, we saved each other. Shadow padded over and sat at their feet, his tail wagging gently. He looked up at Marcus with those intelligent amber eyes, and Marcus could have sworn the dog was smiling. An hour later, the mountain was swarming with federal agents. Harlan was taken into custody, his arm set in a temporary splint, his rights read to him in a voice dripping with contempt. The bodies of Councilman Dunn and the fallen operatives were bagged and catalogued. Evidence teams descended on the tunnels, documenting the horrors the consortium had built beneath the Montana mountains. Grace sat in the back of an ambulance, Sophie curled in her lap. Both of them wrapped in emergency blankets. Shadow lay at their feet, refusing to leave their side. Marcus stood nearby, watching, keeping guard even now. Torres limped over his arm in a sling. Hell of a night. Hell of a week. You know this isn't really over, right? The consortium is still out there. They'll regroup. They'll try again. I know. So what do we do? Marcus looked at Grace and Sophie. At the mother holding her daughter like she would never let go. At the child who had shown more courage than grown men twice her size. We stay, he said. We protect them. For as long as it takes. That could be forever. Then it's forever. Torres studied his friend for a long moment. Then he smiled. You always were a stubborn bastard. Learned from the best. Cross appeared beside them, his face unreadable as always. I'm leaving. There's nothing left for me here. Where will you go? Somewhere far. Somewhere the consortium won't look. He paused. For what it's worth, it was an honor fighting beside you. You could stay. Help us protect them. Cross shook his head. I'm not the protecting type. Never was. He glanced toward Grace and Sophie. Take care of them. They deserve better than this world has given them. He walked into the darkness and was gone. Marcus watched him disappear. Another ghost returning to the shadows. Sophie's voice broke through his thoughts. Marcus. He turned. The little girl was looking at him, her eyes tired but clear. Yeah. Shadow wants to know if you're going to stay. Forever. Like you promised. Marcus walked over and knelt in front of her. Shadow's tail thumped against the ambulance floor. What do you think, Sophie? Should I stay? Daddy said promises are important. He said you should never break a promise, especially to people you love. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Something that had been frozen for a very long time. Then I guess I'm staying. Sophie smiled, the first real smile since the nightmare had begun. Good. Shadow says he's glad. And so am I. She reached out and took his hand. her small fingers wrapped around his scarred knuckles, holding on tight. Grace met his eyes over their daughter's head. There were tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling too. In that moment, surrounded by chaos and destruction with federal agents swarming and sirens wailing, Marcus Cole finally understood what he had been searching for all along. Not peace. Not quiet. Not escape. Home. 3 weeks passed. The world had changed in those 21 days. Elena Vasquez's exposé had detonated like a bomb across every major news network. The consortium, or what remained of it, was being hunted across 3 continents. Arrests numbered in the hundreds. Asset seizures totaled in the billions. Politicians, police chiefs, judges, and businessmen fell like dominoes as David Miller's evidence rippled outward, touching everyone who had ever profited from human suffering. Victor Harlan sat in a federal detention facility awaiting trial on 47 counts, including murder, human trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy. His lawyers had already quit twice. No one wanted their name associated with the monster of Pinewood Ridge. But for Grace Miller, the victory felt hollow. She stood where her clinic had been, staring at the charred remains of everything her husband had built. The insurance money would come eventually. The Federal Victims' Compensation Fund had already approved a substantial payment. But money couldn't rebuild memories. Money couldn't resurrect the examination room where David had saved his first life in this town, or the waiting room where generations of families had sat and hoped and prayed. Sophie appeared beside her shadow, walking at her heels like a furry guardian angel. "Mommy, are you sad?" Grace wiped her eyes quickly. "A little baby. I'm just remembering." Remembering Daddy. Yes, and remembering what this place used to be. Sophie looked at the ruins. Her small face was thoughtful, far too old for her 6 years. "Daddy would want us to build it again." "I know he would. So why don't we?" Grace smiled despite her tears. "It's not that simple, sweetheart. Building takes time, and money, and energy, and right now Mommy is very tired. Marcus could help. Marcus has done enough. He saved our lives. That's why he should help more." Sophie's logic was unassailable in the way only a child's could be. "He loves us. When you love people, you help them. That's what you always say." Grace's heart clenched. Sophie, Marcus is just a friend. He stayed because he wanted to protect us. Now that we're safe, he might need to go back to his own life. His own life is sad. He told me. "When did he tell you that?" "When we were hiding in the basement, before the bad men came. He said he came here because he was running away from sad things. But then he found us, and the sad things started to feel smaller." Grace didn't know what to say. She had been so focused on survival on Sophie, on getting through each day, that she hadn't let herself think about what came next. About whether Marcus would stay or go. About what she felt for this man who had appeared from nowhere and changed everything. "Can I ask you something, Mommy?" "Of course, baby. Do you love Marcus?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible. Before Grace could answer, a voice came from behind them. "Sophie, there you are." Marcus walked toward them, his arm still bandaged from the graze wound he'd taken at the mining facility. Torres was with him, fully recovered from his shoulder injury, grinning in a way that suggested trouble. "We've been looking for you two everywhere," Torres said. "Got something to show you." "What is it?" "A surprise. Come on." Sophie grabbed Grace's hand and pulled her along shadow, trotting beside them. They walked through town past Henderson's grocery, where everything had started, past the Salty Spoon Diner, where the townspeople had finally found their courage, past the sheriff's station, where Deputy Vance now wore a different badge. They stopped in front of a building Grace didn't recognize at first. Then she saw the sign. Miller Family Medical Center, Coming soon, rebuilding together. Below the sign, a crowd had gathered. Dozens of people. Jed the fisherman, the waitress from the diner, families Grace had treated over the years, children she had vaccinated, elderly patients whose blood pressure she had monitored. Everyone. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. What is this? Marcus stepped forward. The town took up a collection, plus the federal compensation, plus some donations from people who read Elena's story and wanted to help. It's enough to rebuild. Not just the clinic, the whole thing. Better than before. We're starting construction next week, Jed called out. Got volunteers lined up from here to Missoula. Gonna be the finest medical center in the county. But I didn't ask for this. You didn't have to. Deputy Laura Vance pushed through the crowd. She wore a sheriff's star. Now the town had elected her unanimously after Patterson's corruption was exposed. David Miller saved lives here for 20 years. You saved lives for 2 more. This town owes you a debt it can never repay. This is just a start. Grace was crying now, openly, uncontrollably. Sophie hugged her legs and Shadow pressed against her side, and then Marcus was there too, his strong arms wrapping around her, holding her steady when she couldn't stand on her own. You don't have to do this alone, he whispered. You never did. I don't know how to thank you. Any of you. You don't have to thank us, Torres said. Just get back to work. This town needs a doctor. I'm a nurse. Grace laughed through her tears. Then it needs a nurse. Whatever. Just stop crying before you flood the foundation. The crowd laughed. Sophie laughed. Even Shadow's tail wagged. And somewhere in the chaos of joy and gratitude, Grace Miller felt something she hadn't felt in 18 months. Hope. The federal trial began in Seattle 6 weeks later. Grace was called as a witness. Marcus accompanied her, refusing to let her face Victor Harlan alone. Sophie stayed in Pinewood Ridge with Torres Shadow and a small army of protective neighbors. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, federal agents, families of victims who had been rescued from the consortium's trafficking pipeline. Everyone wanted to see the monster in chains. Victor Harlan sat at the defense table, his arm still in a cast from Shadow's attack. He had lost weight. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame. But his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were exactly the same. Grace walked to the witness stand on legs that trembled. Please state your name for the record. Grace Ellen Miller. Mrs. Miller, can you tell the court about your relationship to the defendant? Grace looked at Harlan. He stared back, unblinking, a faint smile playing at his lips. He was trying to intimidate her. Even now, even in chains, he was trying to make her afraid. She thought about David, about the journal he had left behind, about the truth he had died trying to expose. She thought about Sophie, about the little girl who had stood up to 3 armed men with nothing but her voice and her courage. She thought about Marcus, about the broken soldier who had found purpose in protecting a family that wasn't his. And she felt the fear drain away, replaced by something harder, something fiercer. My relationship with Mr. Harlan began when he tried to buy my home. When I refused, he sent his men to threaten me. When that didn't work, he had my husband murdered. When that didn't work, he tried to take my daughter. The courtroom murmured. Objection, Harlan's lawyer said weakly. The defendant has not been charged with Dr. Miller's death. Overruled, the judge said. Continue, Mrs. Miller. Grace continued. For 3 hours, she testified. She described the harassment, the intimidation, the arson, the night Sophie was held at gunpoint. She described David's journal, his investigation, his courage in the face of evil. When she finally stepped down, she walked past the defense table. Harlan leaned toward her. "This changes nothing," he whispered so quietly only she could hear. "The consortium has a long memory. One day when you've forgotten to be afraid, they'll come for you. For your daughter. For everyone you love." Grace stopped walking. She turned to face him, her eyes meeting his directly for the first time. "Let them come," she said. "We'll be ready." She walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Marcus was waiting for her in the hallway. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing that matters." "Grace." "He threatened Sophie again. Threatened all of us. Said the consortium would come." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'll kill him." "No, you won't." Grace took his hand. "Because he wants that. He wants to make us into monsters like him, and we won't give him the satisfaction. So what do? We live, we build, we protect each other. And if they come when they come, we fight. Together." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had lost everything and rebuilt from ashes. This mother who had stood between her child and evil without flinching. This nurse who healed wounds and hearts with equal skill. "I love you." The words came out before he could stop them. 3 words he hadn't said to anyone in years. 3 words he had buried beneath layers of training and trauma and self-imposed isolation. Grace's eyes widened. "I love you," he repeated, stronger now. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe that first day in the parking lot. Maybe when I saw Sophie hug Shadow for the first time. Maybe when you refused to sell your home, even when they threatened to burn it down. I don't know. But I know how I feel. And I know I don't want to leave. Ever." Grace's hand tightened around his. "I love you too." She kissed him then, right there in the federal courthouse hallway, with reporters watching and cameras flashing, and the whole world as witness. She kissed him, and the fear, and the pain, and the grief of the past 18 months melted away, replaced by something new, something bright, something worth fighting for. The verdict came 3 days later. Guilty on all counts. Victor Harlan was sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. As the bailiffs led him away, he turned one last time toward the gallery, where Grace sat with Marcus and Torres and Deputy Vance. His eyes found Grace's. She met his gaze without flinching. And then she smiled. Harlan's face contorted with rage as he was dragged from the courtroom, his screams echoing off the walls until the doors slammed shut behind him. Justice. Not revenge, not violence, not blood. Justice. Sophie was waiting for them at the airport. She ran across the terminal the moment she saw her mother Shadow bounding beside her, Torres struggling to keep up. "Mommy! Mommy!" Grace caught her daughter and lifted her high, spinning her around, tears streaming down both their faces. "I missed you so much, baby." "I missed you more. Did the bad man go to jail?" "Yes, sweetheart. He's going to be in jail forever." "Good." Sophie's voice was firm. "That's where bad people belong." She squirmed down from her mother's arms and ran to Marcus, throwing herself against his legs. "You came back!" Marcus knelt down and hugged her tight. "I promised, didn't I?" "You did. And Daddy said you should never break a promise." "Your daddy was right," and Sophie pulled back and looked at him with those 2 wise eyes. "Mommy said you might have to go back to your other life." "I don't have another life. Not anymore. So you're staying forever." Marcus looked at Grace over Sophie's head. She was crying again, happy tears this time, nodding with a smile that lit up her entire face. "Forever," he said. Sophie's whoop of joy echoed through the entire terminal. 1 year later. The Miller Family Medical Center stood whole and proud on its original foundation. It was bigger than before, with a new wing for pediatric care and a memorial garden dedicated to David Miller. His photograph hung in the lobby, smiling at everyone who entered. The opening ceremony drew people from across the state. Elena Vasquez came covering the story for a national magazine. Torres came having made Pinewood Ridge his permanent home after falling in love with the waitress from the Salty Spoon. Deputy now Sheriff Laura Vance came bringing half her department. Even Mr. Cross sent a gift, an anonymous donation that paid for the clinic's most advanced diagnostic equipment. Grace stood at the podium facing a crowd that had once been too afraid to speak out and had become a community of heroes. "My husband David believed that everyone deserves healing," she said. "Not just their bodies, but their hearts, their spirits, their hope. He built this clinic to serve people who had nowhere else to turn. And when they killed him, I thought that dream died with him." She paused, looking at Sophie in the front row. Shadow at her side, Marcus holding her hand. "I was wrong. Dreams don't die. They transform. They grow. They spread from person to person like seeds in the wind. This clinic isn't David's dream anymore. It's our dream. All of us. Everyone who refused to stay silent. Everyone who fought back. Everyone who chose courage over fear." She lifted her gaze to the mountains beyond the town, the peaks still capped with snow despite the summer sun. "To those who thought they could break us, you failed. To those who thought they could silence us, we are louder than ever. To those who thought they could take our home, look around. This is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have." The crowd erupted in applause. Sophie jumped up from her seat and ran to the podium, scrambling up the steps with Shadow close behind. She grabbed her mother's hand and looked out at the crowd with the fearless confidence she had displayed that day in the parking lot. "My name is Sophie Miller," she announced, her small voice carrying across the gathering. "My daddy was a hero. My mommy is a hero. And Marcus is a hero too. But you know what?" She looked at the faces, watching her old miners and young families, farmers and teachers, everyone who had stood up when it mattered most. "You're all heroes, every single one of you. Single." The applause was deafening. Later that evening, after the ceremony and the celebration after the last guest had gone home and the lights had dimmed, Marcus found Grace standing in the memorial garden, looking at David's photograph. "He would have loved this," she said without turning around. "Yes, he would have. I wish he could have met you." "Me too." Grace turned to face him. In the fading light, she looked younger somehow. Lighter. Like a weight she had carried for 18 months had finally been lifted. "Sophie asked me something a long time ago, before all of this. She asked if I loved you." "What did you say?" I didn't answer. I was too afraid, too broken, too convinced that I didn't deserve happiness again. She stepped closer, taking both his hands in hers. "I'm not afraid anymore. Neither am I. So where do we go from here?" Marcus smiled a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. The kind he hadn't worn since before the war, before the loss, before the emptiness that had driven him to a small cabin in the mountains of Montana. "Wherever you want, as long as we go together." Sophie's voice interrupted them from across the garden. "Are you two going to kiss again because Sheriff Vance says if you keep doing that in public, she's going to have to write you a ticket?" They turned to see Sophie standing with Shadow, both of them wearing expressions of mock disapproval. Grace laughed. Marcus laughed. And then they kissed anyway. Sophie made gagging noises while Shadow wagged his tail. And somewhere above them in the stars that were just beginning to appear, David Miller watched over his family with a smile on his face and peace in his heart. The story that began in terror ended in triumph. The widow who refused to surrender had won. The soldier who came searching for peace had found purpose. The child who stood up to monsters had become a symbol of courage. And the town that learned to fight back had become a beacon of hope. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that courage is contagious and that they are never truly alone. We read every single comment. Let us know below, who was your favorite hero in this story? Was it Marcus the Protector, Shadow, the loyal guardian, Grace, the mother who never gave up, or little Sophie, who proved that the smallest voices can shake the world? Please subscribe to our channel. We are building a community that believes in these stories of hope and courage, and we would be honored if you would join us. Before you go, we want to send a prayer out to every single person watching this. May God bless you and keep you safe. May He give you the strength to face whatever battles you are fighting, and the courage to be a light for others in the darkness. If you believe in this power of good to overcome evil, and if you felt the spirit of this story, please write Amen in the comments below. Let us know you are part of this family. Thank you for watching. And remember, when someone threatens those you love, when the world tells you to stay silent, when fear whispers that you cannot win, stand up anyway. Because courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. Courage means you're afraid, and you stand up anyway. That is the lesson Sophie Miller taught us. That is the legacy David Miller left behind. That is the truth that saved Pinewood Ridge. And that is the truth that will save us all. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.